Okay, so you need 2 pieces of chipboard 8 by 10. We're going to wrap these with 2 pieces of cardstock 10 by 12. So if this sounds a little funny for some stupid reason when I recorded this, I think I was just testing and then the actual box came together just right. So I'm doing a voiceover on this instead. So if this sounds like not like my usual tutorials, that's why, and I apologize. So I've prepped the chipboard here. Chipboard again is 8 by 10. To wrap the 8 by 10 pieces, you're going to have 2 pieces that are 8 by 10. You want cardstock that is 10 by 12. So we're going to wrap both of these like you would for a normal album cover. If you were making just a standard album in the manner that we've been making these with the Easy Wrap method developed by Tammy at Country Craft Creations. So what I'm doing here is I am just getting these put down. I'm using my 1-inch templates on the side, so I have that 1-inch border all the way around my chipboard piece when I put it down on my cardstock. And the reason I'm doing it this way is, and I've talked about this in other tutorials as well, I just like to do repetitive steps all together rather than putting one down, moving the templates, moving the scoreboard, wrapping it, bringing that all back in, putting the second one down. I like to kind of, I don't know, I call it assembly line crafting, just where you're kind of, you know, streamlining your process, I guess. Okay, so we've got those 2. So we're going to go ahead and wrap these. You're going to use the chipboard and bend it back against the edge of the cardstock against the edge of the chipboard so that you get that crease, and then you're just going to burnish where that folds over so you get a good crease on those corners. And we're going to go ahead and do that on both of these pieces. And again, that's just, you know, for just to kind of streamline the process so that you're, you know, not continually moving things around on your work surface. I don't know. Works for me, may not be, you know, what works for you or how you want to do it. However works best for you, as always. It is your project. You do it the way you want to do it. Okay, so apparently I'm out of frame on this. What we are doing, and if you've made other albums or things with that Easy Wrap cover, where you have folded that cardstock around the chipboard, you're going to have a square in the corner that you're going to cut out. You're then going to come back in and just make sure on your corners that you're cleaning those up, that nothing's hanging over. And if you are at all confused by this, literally every video I have done, every tutorial I've done in the last, oh my gosh, almost year now has used this method. So I did not realize when I was doing this that I was out of frame for that, and I apologize. But it is a method that is in every tutorial, and if you've done, because this is the last of the spell books that's being posted, if you've done the other 2, you have already done this step on both of those. You're doing this, wrapping these 2 pieces exactly the same way. So I probably almost finished cutting out a frame because, you know, of course I did. And too, it should be noted, when I was doing this piece of it, I was at the beginning of a fairly severe depressive episode and was making myself come in here and work on this project. I'd had it cut and, you know, ready to just sit down and record for a while, and I just, depression absolutely sucks. And, you know, it's one of those things, unless you've encountered it and you know, had one of the, you know, where it just kind of goes on and on, it's very hard to explain to somebody who hasn't been through that. But you know, that's one thing that quite honestly has been kind of nice here in recent months, especially with quarantines and viruses and pandemics and all of this, you know, that mental health issue has gotten talked about a lot more. And which is kind of nice because, you know, I know there's a lot of us out there that have that problem, and quite honestly, crafting has helped immensely. And it's just nice to know that you're not alone. Okay, so all we're doing here is we're going around the outside of the chipboard, and then on the outside edge of the cardstock, putting 1/4 inch score tape down. We're doing that on both of those pieces. And then once I've got that down, I'm going to go ahead and pull the backing off of the score tape on all 4 sides. And then we're going to wrap the chipboard. So you can see the way this is lying here, you can see how those corners from when you were folding the cardstock around the chipboard, how those have been trimmed and cut out. You would want to do this on both of those pieces. It's fun to watch me fight with the score tape backing, isn't it? Oh my gosh, this is why I typically try not to have to do a voiceover on mine, because I really hate having to watch myself back, but that's okay. That is my little cheap glue holder that I got from a friend. I don't know where she got it from, but it holds even that bigger bottle of the art glitter, which is awesome. So all we're doing here is just running some glue along the chipboard, and then in that open area between your score tape and your chipboard to glue this down. And the reason we use both adhesives is the score tape grips immediately. The glue makes sure it holds forever and always. So that's why we do that. And I can tell I was like recording to see if this actually worked, and two, partially probably to remember what I did, because doing this the way I was doing it was going to be kind of new to me. I hadn't tried to do one where it was open on one side on a box before, so I think I was recording anticipating that I would just use this for notes, but then this one came out just about like I was hoping it would, that I was like, oh, I don't need to record it. At the time, not thinking that, you know, hello, you didn't explain what you were doing on this, but that's okay. We have ways around that, thankfully, so it'll be fine. Okay, so again, glue along the score tape, fold that up and over, and when I do that, I am using my bone folder to push that cardstock up against the side of the chipboard before I fold it over and down. And in case you're wondering, those are compression gloves because I've been having a little bit of an issue with carpal tunnel, which comes and goes every now and then. I can tell I've been really busy at work if it's flaring up again, which means I've spent a lot of time in front of the computer just typing. That's how I can always tell. So that does kind of help with that. So there we go. All right, so we should be getting into our side pieces here in just a second. I think I'm gonna, there they are. Okay, so for our side pieces, we have 2 short pieces that are 7 3/4 by 1 1/2. They're going to be wrapped with 2 pieces of cardstock that are 4 inches by 9 3/4. And I did actually measure those incorrectly. And I'm trying to remember here if I redid those. I think I did. No, I didn't. I just eyeballed it. So it actually should have been 4 1/2, not 4. So 4 1/2 by 9 3/4 is what that really should have been. And both of mine were wrong, but really if you cut it at 4, it's fine. You're just going to want to eyeball it rather than using your 1 1/2 inch spacer on the side there, because it is going to be just a little bit short, and it's better to have it centered than, you know, anything else. So I knew I had done that on one of them. I just didn't realize it was the one where I didn't talk. So again, I'm just getting the backing off of, the square tape backing off of my chipboard. Just kind of eyeballing, getting that centered up as best I can. And then we've got our longer side, which is 9 7/8 by 1 1/2. And this one I did also measure incorrectly. This should be 4 1/2, not 4 by 10 7/8. But that's okay. We can work around it. And since I haven't been doing cutlass, and apparently I'm really struggling with that score tape on this piece. My gosh, seriously. Okay, so 1 1/2 by 9 7/8. To wrap it should be 4 1/2 by 11 7/8. Okay, so we're just going to fold again, just like we did with the 2 cover pieces, but what we're going to do from this point is going to be a little bit different. So I'm just going to take all 3 of these pieces, get them folded over and burnished, so I have that little corner burnished square that you're going to see here. Assuming I didn't do this one out of frame as well. Hopefully I didn't, because I think I might have been thinking about it a little bit more at this point. Again, hopefully. Oh my gosh. Some days I shouldn't be allowed to craft, I'm telling you. Okay, we're going to go ahead and fold the third one. Same thing again. Fold and burnish. Okay, so this we're doing just a little bit differently because we need tabs to attach. We need one on an end and we need one on top and bottom. And I'm thinking on this one I might have done it ever so slightly differently. Maybe not. Well, I guess we're going to wait and see what I did, because at this point I'm doing like you would do your hinges on a normal album, where instead of cutting out the square, I'm sorry, not the hinge, the spine, I don't know why I always say that, instead of having the square cut out, you're going to cut that triangle off, so you would go across. I'm honestly not sure what I'm doing here yet. I'm not honestly sure what I did here, because I know that's not how I attach these. Okay, that's what I did. Okay, so rather than do a tab on the end of each one of those, what I did was, you're going to do the two smaller ones like you were building a hinge for a book. So that's where you're going to cut out that triangle and fold that flap over so you have the two wings. For this one, what I did is I cut the the square out instead. And I had done it wrong initially, so you'll see right there I'm removing the score tape. So this one needed to have the tabs on all four sides. You're not going to fold any of these in just yet. So what you're going to do, you're going to go ahead and get those kind of folded so that they're pretty much ready to go. You're going to miter the edges of those two small pieces, those sides on those two pieces, like I'm doing there. It doesn't have to be a real aggressive miter, just a little one. And quite honestly, at this point, it probably been easier to just re-record this entire section, but we're this far into it at this point, we're just going to go with it. I apologize. If you've done any of my other tutorials, you know that's not normally how this is done, but that's okay. I don't know. Oh, I know what I'm doing. Okay, so I am putting score tape on the ends of the small tabs, and then what we're going to do is get the backing off of one side, and we are going to attach this to that other small hinge piece that's sitting right there next to it. And I think what I did here, and I actually ended up figuring out later on that this did not work as well as I would have hoped because it wasn't as square as I wanted. But you're going to wrap that small tab is going to go out around the outside of the other side piece. Because once we go through and mat the sides of the box, the spellbook box itself, you're not going to see this, so it's not really going to matter. So I was using my scoreboard to just try to get a good right angle, get it attached in the right place. Of course, laying it flat again there so I can burnish it down, but that got me the angle that I needed. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. I'm going to get the score tape off. I'm going to add some glue. And considering, yeah, I think I recorded this like 3.5 weeks ago, so yeah, I apologize. I should have done the voiceover at the time, and I didn't do it, you know, right after I recorded it, and I didn't. I don't know why, but it's okay. We'll get through this, I promise. So, you've got your 3 pieces. Now you need to attach your cover. So, what I did, and again, this method was okay. It was not ideal. I was using the sides of the scoreboard to try to get a right angle and to get that corner perfectly square. Did not work as well as I had hoped, but that's okay. So I'm just adding a little bit of glue onto that tab, folding this up, well, standing it up, I guess, not really folding it. Using the corner of my scoreboard to try to get that as much of a right angle as I can, and then gluing it and just using my clips to hold it in place for now. Okay, so you have a fairly square little box sides, I guess we'll call them. Okay, so then I did the same thing on the other corners. Again, just gluing those tabs to each other to form that corner for that base part of our box. And I think the other 2 I did it a little bit differently. I kind of had come up with a better methodology for how I was doing this because these ended up kind of shifting on me a little bit. Which they're handmade boxes, they're not going to be perfect. And I mean, it's crafting, none of it's going to be perfect, and that's totally fine. So, getting that second corner down. And again, I'm using the scoreboard to get good right angles. Good-ish right angles, about as much as you can expect from, you know, a handmade box. 3/4 of a handmade box? I don't know. All right. So, here's just get a little bit more glue tapped in there where maybe I didn't get it in as well as I should have, and that's okay. Okay, get the clips off. Now, I used the scoreboard. I put one of my cover pieces in, and then what I'm doing is I am putting, well, I'm getting some score tape on there first. And again, same reason we use it when we're building album covers, when we're wrapping, is you want that little bit of score tape that's going to grab right away, and then the glue that's going to hold it forever. Okay, so same basic principle here. And honestly, it probably would have been easier to get the score tape on here before I had glued those 3 pieces to, you know, into an upright position, but that's okay. Because truly, if you've done the other 2 before you get to this one, you'll probably have kind of gotten the general idea of what we're going for at this point and can adjust your construction accordingly. I've got that score tape on there. What we're doing, you're going to have a little bit of an overhang on the left and right. The back is going to be absolutely flush, okay? So I was using the scoreboard to kind of help facilitate getting that lined up correctly. Get the tape pulled off. And, apparently it wasn't burnished down enough, so there we go. Get the backing off of here and here. Okay. And then we're going to fill in that space that does not have the score tape with glue. And then again, you're just going to center this right to left. You want the back of that piece absolutely flush with the back of that cover piece. I had a really hard time doing this on the scoreboard, so honestly, I don't recommend doing this piece of it on the scoreboard. It works much better, and I don't remember if I figure this out in a second here or not, that it worked better to actually stand it up on its end on my table and then line the other piece up and then like sandwich it together, if that makes sense. I believe that's actually how I did it on the other one. So again, we were at experiment point right here, and yeah, it's okay. So again, we're just going around the edges with the score tape. And we're basically going to do the same thing again. But what we're doing when we put the other side on is we're trying to get it lined up right to left so that those two cover pieces are aligned. Again, you want the back half of it, so the bottom, if you had this standing up on its side, you want the back lined up flush. You want it centered right to left. And I think this is where I'm figuring out the best way to go about getting this lined up right. And I've got gunk on my hook. Which there's almost always gunk on the hook, but that's okay. Unfortunately, I had 3 fairly involved tutorials. This is the only one that needed a whole bunch of work. So the other 2 are definitely, one of them is already up. The other one's ready to go. Aha, there's where I went. That works better. Let's stand this up because that makes way more sense. Oh my gosh, some days I'm telling you, I shouldn't be allowed in here. Yep, because then I'm using the scoreboard, the sides again, to get everything lined up so it's even. Aha, there we go. Success! Except it's fairly narrow and it was kind of hard to get my hand in there to try to burnish that down. Okay, so there's our box base. How about that? All right, so now we are going to do our little rounded piece that goes on the end. And ignore that because that actually sizing for the spine on the book is absolutely incorrect on that piece that you just saw. Do not do that. That was part of the problem with this one, is I made an entire base, went to put it in there based off of that little piece you see down there in the left-hand corner, and it was absolutely too big. So, don't do that. All right, so here we have thin chipboard. Okay, this stuff is great. You can bend it, you can do lots of things with it you might not be able to do. with normal chipboard, and that's how we are actually wrapping the spine of this book. So hopefully, let me actually find my notebook, because so let's see, I'm testing it around there to make sure it's going to work the way I want it to work. So the lightweight chipboard that goes around that is going to be 10 inches long, and I think I did it 3 3/4. One thing you want to watch when you do this is, after you get this lightweight chipboard wrapped and you go to put it on the book itself, you want to watch where how much of that you're having kind of overhang, I guess. So this is 10 inches by 3 3/4. Oh, good, I wrote it on there. How about that? Oh, except that was 4 1/2. That's what it was. It's what I'm writing on here is incorrect. It should be 10 inches by 3 3/4, wrapped with a piece that is 12 inches by 5 3/4. Okay. Since it doesn't work quite as well to wrap the lightweight chipboard the way we normally would, I do sometimes do this where I'm scoring 1 inch around. That helps you kind of line it up on top there, and then too, when you go to actually wrap the chipboard around, it does help with that as well. So again, the measurement that you see written on there is not correct. This should be 3 3/4 by 10 inches. When we go to attach this to that base piece that we've already made, you want 1 inch attached to the book. You will then round it, and you will attach 1 inch on the opposite side. Okay, that's where the measurement difference between what you see written on the chipboard on the screen right now versus what it should have been is coming from, because on mine, and you don't see it because it's on the bottom of the book that sits on the table that you do not see, it was not even when I wrapped it and attached it around the book. That's where the difference in the sizing comes from. So just so you kind of understand, what I was doing here. And again, this was the first one of them I built. I didn't know if this process was even going to work at this point, which clearly it did, because we have a finished project. But you're just going to wrap the the cardstock around this just like you would with the cover. You're going to miter your corners. You're going to cut out that square, miter those corners, and then wrap the cardstock around the lightweight chipboard, and then we're going to attach it to the book. You're going to do this part of it just like you would do the normal covers. So once we've trimmed out those corners, you're going to go ahead and do your 1/4 inch score tape, and then your glue all the way around and wrap those sides just like we do on a normal cover. And I know some of the designers will build like prototypes of their projects out of, not as good cardstock, and to make sure everything's going to work and adjust the dimensions. This was one of those projects I probably should have done that with. But quite honestly, it worked out so much better than I could have expected, that, having not done a prototype. But it just, I don't know. Everybody has their own way of designing and doing this. I know in talking to like Tammy and to Kim, they just basically get the paper and look at it and then just start, decide on a size, and then they just start cutting. I literally sit and sketch them out, you know, and I mean, I cannot draw worth anything, but I kind of get an idea of what I'm doing and how I'm doing it, and, you know, kind of a rough sketch of elements on the pages. And I mean, even right down to, okay, I know my base is, you know, like in this case, 8 by 10. So I want my pages to be, you know, 7 3/4 by 9 3/4, or 7.5 by 9.5, or whatever it may be. Which I don't remember what size the pages are on this, so don't quote me on that. But you know, I'll sit and sketch all of this out and write it out and everything ahead of time. Go through and pre-cut everything and just adjust sizing as I go if needs be. Most of the time, I'm usually fairly close to what it actually needs to be, and if there is a change, you know, I always, of course, tell you guys as I'm going through and doing this. But we're just about finished wrapping the lightweight chipboard, except I don't think I cleaned up my corners, so I'm sure that's what I'm kind of off camera there doing, because that would be about right. I am totally in love with the lightweight chipboard. It's just so easy to work with. And you can cut it with just a normal paper trimmer. You don't need anything fancy. It's not going to ruin your blades. And once you get that artisan cardstock on it, especially when you get it on both sides, then it just is fabulous. You can hardly tell that it was lightweight chipboard. So what I'm doing here is I'm just kind of training this to roll. Okay. So I'm doing a combination of burnishing it with my bone folder as I kind of pull it up and train it to wrap around, and then two, just kind of rolling it. In fact, I think I actually even used my glue bottle at one point. I don't remember if it was this one or one of the other ones, that I kind of just, you know, folded it around the glue bottle just to, you know, train it a little bit more so that you're not fighting it too much when you attach it to the book. And it does bend easily enough. You don't have to do a whole lot. You can supposedly, and I didn't try it on this, and I probably should have just to try it. Supposedly, you can mist the lightweight cardstock or chipboard with a little bit of water, and really make it bend and, you know, take shape you wanted to. Yeah, see there, I'm just kind of helping to get that rounded edge in there. Okay, so now I'm going to bring the book in and attach it on one side. And this is where I did not look to see if my sides were even when I did this, which was just kind of dumb on my on my side, but that's okay. So what I did is used a little bit of score tape, and again, same reason, you know, so you have something that grips immediately, and then you want your glue that's gonna, you know, hold it now and forever. So I'm getting some, I think that's the 3/8 inch score tape on that, so a little bit wider score tape here than what we've been using to this point. If you've only got 1/4 inch, that's fine. 1/4 inch will work just fine. And I think I was trying to do something with rubber bands to get it to hold, which I really ended up not needing to do, so in fact, I think I left it that way overnight. I had a couple of them break in the night, so it didn't matter. I didn't use that method on any of the other ones, and it was fine. So okay, I am getting the score tape off, getting some glue on here, and what you're going to do is you're going to go about 1 inch. So you're going to have 1 inch of this make contact with the side of your book. You're going to get it on there. You're going to let it sit for a second, make sure, you know, the glue has started to dry. We know the score tape has attached. This should go edge to edge. You can't really, I mean, you can kind of burnish it down, but you're going to have a little bit of give because of the way the box is constructed. And then all you're going to do is just bend that around. Make sure that's good and stuck. And that's where I said, really, you know, you should give it a minute or so to kind of dry a little bit before you do this. And then you'll go 1 inch on this opposite side and attach it down. And then you have your fun little rounded edge on your book. All right, there you have it. So let's move on to our insert. Okay, so we're going to start with our album that goes into our first insert. So for this, you need 1 piece of chipboard 9 5/8 by 7 3/4, 2 pieces 9 5/8 by 3 13/16, and I apologize for the weird measurement, but where we're making this a gatefold, that's the only way it's going to close. So, or light up right. And then for our spines, we need 2 pieces 9 5/8 by 1 1/8. Okay. To wrap those, for the spines, we need 2 pieces 11 5/8 by 4 1/8. I'm going to set the spine pieces off to the side for right now. For the front cover pieces, we need 2 pieces 11 5/8 by 5 13/16. If you want to make this 5 3/4, you can. You'll just be like a tiny hair off on one side when you go to wrap it, and that's fine. And then for the centerpiece, 11 5/8 by 9 3/4. And then we need 2 pieces 9 1/2 by 5 that are going to reinforce on the spine. And I'm going to set those to the side for right now. So let's start with our base pieces. I'm going to go ahead and get my paper in here. I'm going to be using my 1 inch templates, and if you haven't seen them yet on the Country Craft Creations website and you use this wrap method for your albums, Tammy has gotten acrylic spacers. They come in a set of 3, 2 of the 1 inch and 1 of the 1 1/2 inch. They are 1 inch by 12 and then 1 1/2 by 12 to do your spacing to wrap your albums. I believe they're $20 a set, I want to say. I know I looked at it. I don't have mine yet. I am patiently, kind of, sort of, not really patiently awaiting them. And I cannot wait until I get them and do my first tutorial with them, because I did get to use the ones that she was brought at the Greenville, South Carolina retreat, and they are fabulous. So I'm going to go ahead and just put my chipboard down on my pieces here, and then wrap. Yeah, because these 1 inch strips are getting pretty hammered and are about due to be replaced, but I should be getting my other spacers before too much longer. Okay. I'm going to move that for just a second. All right. So we're going to go ahead and fold and burnish. Fold and burnish. Fold and burnish. And one more time. fold and burnish. We're going to go ahead and trim our corners. And you are just cutting that square out that was created when you folded your chipboard, or I'm sorry, your cardstock around your chipboard. And then we're just going to come along, fold them in, and just double check that we don't have anything hanging over the edge. So we want it to be a nice clean corner once we get these wrapped. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and actually I'm going to fold all of these first, and then we'll do our tape. And the reason I'm going to do it that way is because I kind of call it like assembly line crafting. So rather than you know, cut my corners out, tape, wrap, whatever, and then move on to the next one, I do all of one similar step together for any pieces that I have, so that I'm not having to, you know, put this aside, pull this other thing out, do it, put it back, pull out. Just, I don't know. It, to me, and, you know, maybe it's just I'm weird this way, which honestly wouldn't surprise me. I just think it's makes it go a little more smoothly and a little bit faster, but that may just be me. You do it whichever way you are happy with. Okay. All right, so now we're going to take our 1/4" score tape. So I can find the end of the 1/4" score tape, and we're going to put this down on the edges. Okay. So I'm just very quickly going to burnish these down. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and wrap. I'm going to pull all of the backing off of my score tape. Of course, the glue is not going to want to come out. Okay. Turn all the way around to the opposite side. And we're just pushing that the cardstock up against the edge of the chipboard and then up and over. Okay, I'm going to do that on the other two. Again, push it up against the side of the chipboard, over and down. And our last cover piece, and then we'll do our hinges. let's do our spine pieces. So I'm going to grab my chipboard again. I'm sorry, my scoreboard. I am going to put my 1-inch template at the top. We want our long side going down, which, as you know, I use my scoreboard sideways even for this, because I am completely incapable of scoring a straight line. If I have to pull it down towards me, I have to do it to the side, and then I'm okay. And so just out of habit, probably more than anything, even when I'm doing this part, I still turn it sideways. Okay, there is our first one. We'll do our second. Okay, put those away. All right, so we're going to go ahead and fold and burnish on these as well, but we are not going to cut out that corner, that square on the corner. We're going to cut across on as like a triangle is what we're going to cut out. So on this one, instead of cutting out that triangle or square, we're going to go from one fold line to the next and cut off the triangle. We're going to do that on both of those spine pieces. Okay, we're going to get our tape, and in this case our tape is going to go on the end and then on the end. Okay, push those down really quickly. Alright, so then we're going to go ahead and get the backing off of these. We're going to do our glue along that line and then in between. We're going to fold up and over and then push those sides out and down. And I do use a little bit more glue on this part of it than I do on the cover, just because we want this really good and stuck down. Whereas the cover, the way it wraps and everything goes together, it's going to stay down regardless. All right, so one more time. Over and down. All right. So now what you want to look at, that did not go down the way it was supposed to. You want to look here and see if you have kind of like a little hump from where the chipboard goes out to the cardstock, and you just want to miter that. Just because you don't want anything sticking up on the edge of your book. Okay. And we're going to do that on both of these. Okay. Stab ourselves with the scissors because that would not be good. Although sadly it wouldn't be the first time. Okay, so what we're going to do is turn these two spine pieces face side up. I'm just going to take my bone folder and I'm just going to work along the edge of that spine, so the edge of that chipboard, and just work that paper down over that edge. Because you'll notice now that where that spine is much more defined than it is before we do that, okay? And again, you're just pushing up against the side of that chipboard and just burnishing this back and forth. And you'll see how that becomes much more defined. Let's not do that. All right. So then I'm going to take my score tape and I'm going to go along my outside edge, and then I'm going to come and put a piece on the side. But you want to stay about 1/8 of an inch away from that chipboard. And that's partially too why we're burnishing that like we are. So that, you'll see when I fold it. Okay, so here's our edge. When the cover is on here, like so, if you do that tape all the way out to that edge right up against the chipboard, you're going to see it, okay? And you don't want that. So we're going to do this on both pieces. Okay, so we are going to start with our main cover, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull my backing off of my tape. I'm going to take my glue, and I'm going to come in between. And then I'm going to do just a tiny bit right next to that tape. Okay, so now I'm going to take my cover. I'm going to use my fingernail, my finger as a guide at the top. I'm going to start with this on top of the spine. Using my finger as a guide to keep it aligned at the top because I can see where it's aligned at the bottom. I'm going to pull this over till I feel it drop off the chipboard, and then we're going to push it down. Okay? And then I'm actually going to do our opposite side, and then we'll do the two smaller pieces last. So again, burnish this down because I don't think I did. I'm going to do it again on this opposite side. And again, we're going to go in between. right next to that line. And again, we're going to start on top of our spine, line it up, you feel it drop off, and then we'll put it down. Okay? We're just going to stay on this side over here. I'm going to do it again. And the same thing, we're going to start on the spine itself, over until you feel it drop. And when I say feel it drop, it's not going to be like, oh, that just dropped off. You'll know what I mean when you feel it do it. It's not a huge drop, but you will feel a difference in the position of that piece when you do that. I was trying to explain that at one of the retreats to somebody, and until they actually tried it, then they're like, oh, I get what you mean. I'm like, yes. It's not like a drop, but it's enough that you notice there's a change. Okay, and then our last piece. All right, and then I'm going to turn it over, and I'm going to burnish all of this down. And when I'm doing that, I'm kind of pushing on this spine piece and kind of pushing it more firmly down in between those two pieces. And then that will close up just like so, and there's your lovely little gatefold. Before we do that, we need to put our inside pieces down, and these are going to go just a hair over, about 1/4 of an inch over on each side of where this comes out, okay? So like, see, it's about 1/4 of an inch on each side. And that's just going to help to reinforce and this, just so I can see like top to bottom, making sure I'm getting it on here right. I'm going to turn it sideways. And then you're just going to burnish that down. I did cover the entire back of this piece with score tape. If you want to glue it, you can, but you're going to have to put it down and then let it sit for a few minutes before you go to fold and work those creases again, if you're using glue as opposed to score tape. Okay. All right. So now I'm going to start over here, and I'm just going to work that paper into that crease as I bring that cover piece up. You can actually fold it all the way over. Nothing's going to crack because of how that goes together. Okay. And then we want to do it again there. And again, you can go all the way over and down. And there you go. We're going to do it on this side. And then again, one more time. Over and down. And there you go. There's our cover. I am going to get the insides together for this, and I'll be right back. Okay, so we have our base. Our album base. That will close up like that. It will slide into our spellbook, okay? I did go ahead and cover the inside of the spellbook base just because you are seeing a little bit, even once we have them put together, you're going to see like this inside and these sides. I went ahead and covered the entire inside just because I'm not sure which is going to be the bottom and which is going to be the top of this piece. And you're just going to have to like measure and see how yours came out as opposed to how mine came out. Because when I put this side down, this top corner got pushed in a little further than it should have. So it was slightly off from what it should be. So if you want to cover the inside of that, you can go ahead and do so, or you can leave it because quite honestly, I don't know that anybody would notice once you have your book done and you're sliding in and out. I don't know that anybody's going to notice or care that the inside of this is unfinished, but that's up to you. So let me move that out of the way. So let's start with, actually, let me bring that back, our front inside covers. So what we're going to do here, and I did one ahead of time just to make sure I had my measurements right. We're going to do a little fold out on each one of these cover pieces on the sides of our gatefold that we're going to tie closed. Okay, so what I've done is I've gone ahead and since I'm not sure what I'm matting it with, I'm just going to guess as far as which ribbon I'm going to go with. And I'm just going to have to mat it with something that matches this, which shouldn't be a problem. But what you need are two pieces that are 12 by 9.5. And this is literally just a hair over 12. So let me turn that. There we go. Okay. We are going to score this with the 12-inch side at the top of the scoreboard at 3 5/8, 7 1/4, and then 10 7/8. Okay. So again, this is 12 by 9.5. You're going to have a fairly big flap that's going to, tab that's going to attach down there. And that's fine. So before I get this folded up, I'm actually going to erase my measurement off of here. Because of course I tend to write right where I need to actually score it. Because that makes sense. And I'm going to go ahead. So we're going to take, so this one's going to go onto this side. We're going to fold that. First tab back and burnish that down. We're going to fold this one over and burnish it down. And then back and burnish. Okay. So what I'm going to do before I attach this down, just because I tend to either get my ribbon too long or too short, there's literally no in between with me. I don't know why. So I'm actually going to tie my ribbon around this before we go and put it down, because this is going to do two things. It's going to make sure that I have enough ribbon to tie it. What that should do, actually I'm going to retie it, but that's okay. Move that. So I ended up with about 24 inches of my seam binding. And I am going to go ahead and tie that. Let's tie it a little bit tighter. That would help, wouldn't it? Totally bow challenged in case you have never noticed this. I am not good at this. All right. And then we're going to go ahead and put these down on here. We're not going to go all the way to this outside edge over here, but we're going to go close. So I'm going to go ahead and get glue, or not. that flap. And just center it up and put it down. I'm going to do the same thing on this other side. I'm going to pull my various paper clips off of here as I was trying it and seeing how this was going to work and if I liked how it came out. All right. Make sure my ribbon's somewhat centered on there. Or at the very least, it's up about the same height as the one across from it. So it's not totally centered, and that's fine. Okay. Now I'll center that up over here. And there is the beginnings of our book. What we're going to do is this. On the top of those flaps, we're going to put a magnet set on each corner because you want to make sure you put it down enough that when we mat this, you know, you're not putting it too close to the edge where you get that little bubble. Okay, all right, so we've got our magnets. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do our base flap for our first flap. So for our flap 1 base, it is 9 by 9.5. So I want to make sure the 9-inch side, yes, the 9-inch side is at the top of your scoreboard. And we are going to score this at, let me find my notes, hold on, at 3/4 of an inch and at, where did I lose it? 1.5. Okay, so this page is going to have a 3/4 of an inch gusset. And it's going to go down in here. So I'm going to go ahead and fold and burnish. Okay, that is going to come in right here. And I just want to center it up, top to bottom. You want to make sure it's not too far to the side so that your flap's going to close, I'm sorry, that your book's going to close correctly. Go ahead and burnish that down. All right, so next part of this, we're actually going to do the back side. On the back side of that flap, we're going to have a pocket. Pocket's going to be 8.5 by 4. We're going to score this at 1/2 inch on 3 sides, 2 short sides, 1 long side. I'm going to go ahead and miter my corners. I'm totally breaking my rule about not dragging a piece of equipment in and out, but this one we kind of need to do a little bit differently than I normally would. Okay, so we're going to turn this out. This is going to go down here at the bottom. So, and of course, and I know you probably know that when you're doing things like that, so I said 8.5, you want to go just a hair short of 8.5 so that your pocket's not too wide. And what you're going to want to do is go ahead and score and fold and then just kind of dry fit it in here and make sure it's not hanging over your edge. Okay? Okay. All right, so we're going to put that down. We're going to go do our flaps for this inside next. We'll finish off this front. Let's get down there. The front here in just a minute. So our second flap is going to open the opposite direction. The base for that is going to be 8 3/4 by 9.5. With the 8 3/4 side at the top of the scoreboard, we're going to score this at 3/4 of an inch, and then again at 1 1/4. Okay. And fold and burnish. And we're going to put our elements on this before we actually put this in our book. So it's going to open up this way. So I'm going to set that to the side for just a second. The front of that is going to have alternating belly bands. Okay, so our first belly band is going to be 3.5 by 10.5. We're going to score this at 1/2 inch on each end. Our second belly band that sits on top of that is going to be 4.5 by 4. So with the 4.5 at the top, we're going to score this at 1/2 inch on each end. And then the back side is going to be a large flap that is 7.5 by 10. With the 10-inch side at the top, we're going to score this at 1/2 inch. And then on top of that, once you open it, I think, we have more flaps. We have one that is 7.5 by 5 1/4 that we are going to score with the 5 1/4 at the top at 1/2 inch. And then two flaps that are 4.5 by 4 3/4 that we are going to score at something's wrong. Okay, we're not going to score these yet because I think I might have cut those wrong. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and miter the corners on my belly bands. And on this flap. And on this flap. Okay, so here's our front, because again, this is opening this direction. We're going to put our long belly band down. We're going to center that on this page, or center it on the flap, that is. burnish again for our small one that sits on top. Okay, and that one is going to sit on here like so. Again, just center it up as close to center as you can get. Doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, so for the back side, that is where our large flap goes, and this is going to come down. And you do want to dry fit this to make sure it's not too long and hanging over, which mine is just a hair longer than it needs to be. Okay. And you can decide if you want this one to flip up or down. I'm going to have this one go down. Okay. So this one's going to come down like so. And then on this flap, I have this flap's going to go up here at the top. These are going to come down here at the bottom. Aha, so that is what I needed to do. No, these are wrong. As is typical. I did something wrong. Okay, so I'm going to put this one down at the top. Before I do that, though, I do need to make sure it's not too long. I'm sorry, too wide, that is. No, it was okay. Of course it was okay, because I just wiped the glue off. Okay. You, of course, want to keep it just a hair away from your hinge there, so that will close up. Okay. And now I got to figure out what I did here, because I did these too wide, but I think I was trying to do it that way so that they would. Okay, so 4.5 by 4 3/4. Just double check myself one more time. Okay, so it goes that way. Okay, so with the 4.5 at the top, we're going to score this at 3/4. That's what it was. So of course I didn't write down my scoring on that one on my notes. So this should, in theory, we'll see. Yeah, okay, that's exactly what I did. Okay, so 4.5 by 4 3/4, 2 pieces. We're going to miter these. With the 4.5 at the top, you're going to score it at 3/4 on both of these, 3/4 of an inch. I'm going to miter. Put that down. All right, so there you go. And that all folds up like so and comes in like that. So bring our book back in. We're going to go ahead and put this one down on the opposite side. And again, you're just going to center that up, top to bottom. You don't want to go all the way into that gusset, of course, because you want your book to close. All right, so there's our first two flaps. Our third flap, we are going to do a flap up and a flap down. So this is 7.5 by 5 3/4. With the 5 3/4 at the top, you want to score at 1/2 inch. I'm sorry, 3/4 of an inch and 1 inch. You need 2 of these. So 3/4 of an inch and 1 inch. We're going to use a magnet to hold that closed. So the piece that is going to get the magnet on the back of it is going to also be sized for a 3x4 cut apart. So this is 3 1/8 by 4 1/8. We don't need to score that one. Okay, on the back of each one of these flaps, we are going to do, I don't know if you've seen this or not, Tammy does what she calls a lay flat pocket. So we have two pieces that are 4.5 by 10. We are going to score this at 2 inches and it's 6.5. And we're going to do that on both of these. So 2 inches and then 6.5. Okay, so let's go ahead. So one flap's going to go up, one flap's going to go down. With the lay flat pockets, we've scored those. You're going to fold both of these in towards each other. Okay. We're going to glue. And if it's helpful, so that you know where your glue needs to stop, go ahead and fold that up and just make a little mark. Okay, so we're going to do glue up to where I've made that mark where this is going to close. This is going to be one pocket, and then this will sit on top of here, and you'll have the back side that you can slide something else into. Okay, so glue just like this. So, okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and fold this just so that we know we're in the... Okay, why does nothing want to stick for me today? Oh my gosh. Okay, so this one's going to fold down. We're going to go ahead and I'm going to run glue just to close off the bottom of that pocket. Okay. And then that whole thing is going to go down on here. Now, if you want to mat underneath this, don't put this down yet. So I most likely will end up matting underneath this, so I'm just going to clip that to the flap it goes on. Okay, so I'm going to do that one more time. We're going to fold this in. We're going to fold this one in. Okay, like so. We're going to glue that side down. Okay. I'm going to glue all the way down on this side and then just up on the top part of that flap, like so. Okay, so now you've got your little pocket there. It's going to fight with me some more because of course it is. And we're going to attach no. So that'll be up this way. That'll be down. Somehow I've done these backwards because I wanted it on the opposite side. I'm going to have to redo that one, but you get the basic idea. So they're going to be on opposite sides. Okay, so this is going to come just in between at the bottom. And this is again where I say, you know, 7.5. You're probably going to want to go just a hair under and probably dry fit this to make sure everything is going to close over the top of it. Okay. Because it's much easier to fix it before you glue it down than after. Okay. Okay. So this, we can just go ahead and glue it down on one side, center it up. And glue it halfway down. Except I want a mat underneath that first, so let's not do that yet. I'm on a roll today, can you tell? It's one of those days I should not be doing this. But I am behind, so here we are. Okay, so this will get glued down on there after we mat it, and we will go ahead and get a magnet on there as well. Just simply so that I don't forget by the time we get there that that's what I needed to do. Ugh, okay. I'm going to center that up on there, and we'll get that down in a little bit. Okay, so on the inside here, we've just got pockets, or a big pocket that is. So we're going to have a flap that's going to come down at the pocket on the bottom, and then there's going to be a flap that sits on top of the pocket. So let's do the pocket first. Pocket's going to be 8.5 by 5.5. We're just going to score this at 1/2 inch on 3 sides. The flap that sits on top is going to be 7.5 by 5.5. We're going to score this at 1/2 inch on the 5.5 inch side. Okay, so that's going to sit on top of that pocket. And then our flap that closes over the top is going to be 7.5 by 6.5. And we're going to score that at 1/2 inch on the 6.5 inch side. So I'm going to go ahead and miter corners on the flap. Move that for just a second here. I'm going to turn this upside down so that I can line this up right. And again, I'm going to dry fit it to make sure it's not too wide, that I'm not running into anything. Everything closes over the top of it. And then I'm going to go ahead and put that down. Okay. Turn it around. And miter the corners on the pocket. Okay, and again, we're going to make sure that we didn't go too wide, that everything closes the way it's supposed to. I'm going to put down that bottom tab first. Okay. Okay, and then this pot flap is going to go on top of this pocket. And this is optional. If you don't want to put the flap on top of the pocket, you don't have to. It's entirely up to you. And I am going to have it fold up instead of down. Okay, so that will all come down there, up, in, and there is your base. Okay, so the fun element that's going on here. I need to find one thing first really quickly. All right, so this is what I am calling my borderless shaker. So how this is going to work, we have a piece of acetate that is 9.5 by 11.5, and I've got the what do you want to call it? I've left the tissue paper on the back side so you can see it sitting in my scoreboard. You're going to score this at 1/2 inch on each side. Okay. To score the acetate, you have to really, really push down. Okay. It can be done. It just is going to take a couple of passes. And this is where turning the scoreboard to the side helps, because it's easier for you to hang on to it so it doesn't slide, and that your hand is not in the way of where you're trying to score while you're holding it. Okay. All right. So now you're going to very carefully, in that little valley where we scored, cut out the corners of that acetate, okay? You don't want to go too far in to where that score line is, because when we fold this up and around, you don't want any of your shaker stuff coming out if you get too far into that corner, okay? All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and fold this over. I'm going to have to take my tissue paper off of this so that you guys, and so I apologize, it's going to be a little bit harder to see, but the other thing I'm going to do, just to make sure I'm not getting dust or scratching my acetate, I am going to put it on a paper towel. Okay, so we're going to fold and burnish. And I have done a shaker similar to this one other time on an album right before I was asked to join the design team at Country Craft Creations. And I did it on my really, really large Lost in Neverland album. And I'll show you the piece that I did here in just a second. Okay. All right. So we've got that all folded. Now, for this, you're going to need one piece of your pattern paper because it's going to sit down in here. The acetate will get adhered to the back side of that piece of paper. It will kind of bubble up on the top, and that's where your borderless shaker is coming from. Okay? This is going to be 7.5 by 9.5, but you may want to cut it just a tiny, tiny bit shorter. And I need to take just a tiny bit off of this so that it's not fitting too tightly in the center of that acetate. Okay. So that will end up going in like so. I still need to take probably just a tiny bit more off of that. Okay, top and bottom. Side to side, it needs just a tiny bit more. Okay, so before we go any further, I'm going to take my 1/2-inch score tape and I am going to go around the edges of my acetate. Okay. And honestly, it's probably easier to get the score tape on this before you really fold and burnish those sides over, but that's okay. It can still be done. You just have to kind of wrestle with it a tiny, tiny bit, and it's fine. Keep that handy because we're going to need that again here in a minute. Before I put those pearls back in here, let's go ahead and get our paper attached on the one side. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm putting this in here down against where I've scored and folded this. And then I'm just going to stand it up. And bring it back against my score tape on this side. Okay. In fact, I think this probably is a little bit easier to do before you get the pearls in here. So that's how we're going to do this. So this was a learning experience. This is good. Okay, I'm going to bring it to the opposite side. And when I get it to the opposite side, I'm going to have to push this side down to meet up with the paper. Okay, so you'll see how this bubbles. That's what we want it to do. Okay, we're going to do the bottom. And before you do the bottom, actually, let's get just a little bit more score tape. And we are going to put that in these corners down here so that we're sealing this off on the sides. Okay. Sorry, it's been about a year and a half since I did one like this. So I'm just trying to remember for sure what I did. All right. So bear with me, I apologize. So we've got our score tape. Just keep in mind, while we're seeing all this ugliness with the score tape, this is all going down on that. This will be, you won't see any of this. Okay, so again, I'm going to fold and down. Okay, so now you've got your pocket. And open that up. We're going to pour our shaker stuff in there. See how cool that is? I do want my other stuff in there with it, I think. So hold on just one second. There it is. I'm going to add some of my gold in there with that. Okay. And this is one from Michael's. All right. So we're going to turn that over. We're going to get our little pieces on the sides again. Okay, get your backing off there. Your little pieces on the sides, because you want to seal that up completely so none of this stuff is going to leak out. Okay, that's why you got those two extra little pieces on here. And then again, we're going to push that down, get that up and over, and down. So here is our shaker. We're going to take, I'm going to use my bigger 1-inch score tape. Maybe I can cut it here. Okay. And make sure when you're putting this tape down that you're not going over the edges where the paper is, so that you're not going anywhere where there's not paper behind it. So you do just need to kind of eyeball it as you're doing it and line it up. Okay. All right. So now, bring your book in. This is going down on top of that flap. Okay, so we're going to get our shaker down on top of our flap. I did move the magnet, so when you've watched this, I'm going to edit this so that we get through this part before we go in and do the rest of the flaps. So when you see the rest of it and you see the magnets attached here, ignore it. didn't work the way I had planned for it to work. So that's okay. It happens. All right, so now I need, and I literally just had it in my hand. Oh my God, seriously. Like 2 seconds ago. Okay, well, we are going to do, we're going to start getting our backing off of our score tape. We're going to do one side at a time. So, the backing off here. And this would probably be easier to do before you put this flap in. So I will tell you that much. Do this before you put the flap in so that you're laying it completely flat. Okay? That side is now stuck down. So what I'm going to do, I can figure out what I literally just did with my little hooky thing. Oh, I dropped it in the garbage because that makes sense. Jeez. I'm telling you, this is not my day. So I'm going to get the backing off of, and we can fold this up to a little bit here. I'm going to get the backing off of the other 3 sides. And I'm going to get some glue just in the middle underneath here where the paper is touching paper, just to secure it a little bit better. Okay. I'll lay this down. Pinch that around on each side. This is why I'm saying this would have been much, much easier with this out of the book, but hindsight being what it is, there we go. All right, so there is our borderless shaker page. What we're going to do now is get our magnets on here. So the magnets are actually going to sit on top of the acetate. We will cover them with ephemera pieces. I might cut some little decorative corners. In fact, that's probably what I'll end up doing just because I think that'll look really nice to hide those magnets, because that's how we're going to keep this whole thing closed when it's sliding in and out of our book, because we can't really do anything too bulky on the front. Really, we can't do anything bulky on the front of this. So let me find my score tape. All right, so we want it to kind of go at an angle like so. So I'm going to push this up and down. And my angle's wrong because I am a complete idiot when it comes to this today. It needs to go opposite of what I'm thinking. Like so. Oh my God, really? This is not my day. I can just tell you right now, I have just had literally nothing go right today. I can't even tell you. I cannot make this. I cannot win today, I'm telling you. There we go. All right, so that will sit there when we get it, everything said and done. right, so we're going to go to the opposite corner now. Actually, I'm going to close that up. And again, I'm going to just feel where that's connecting. And I will go ahead and put my tape over the top of it because that one I hadn't pulled off so much of the backing on it. Okay. Again. This is not playing nicely. That's my own fault because I screwed up. Better. Somewhat. Good enough. Okay, so I will cut something like corner-wise that will cover that up, and that's okay. But essentially, there you go. So we'll close up like that, and then that will slide in your book. Cool, cool. This is what I get for trying to do something completely different. Because, yeah, this is just how my day's going. So, all right, I will be back with our next book. Okay, so finishing off the outside of your spell book. So I'm only going to do this on this one. I've got my other two done, and I'll show you those in a second. So if you're watching the tutorial for the thinner black one or the large green one with the box on top, this part, it is in the right video. I'm only recording it once because it's the same process for all of them, okay? So what I'm going to do, I've got it prepped, but I'm going to show you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure in between these two chipboard pieces, okay? So that is about 2 1/8. And then from the outside here, so where this bend is, to the edge here is about 6 1/4 inches. So what I did is I took some linen artisan cardstock, I cut it wider and a little bit longer than what it needed to be because I then embossed it, okay? And I know on camera you can't really see it, so this is why we're going to distress this, which I would be doing this anyway. Okay, so then once it's distressed, or once it's embossed, and this is just like a wood grain folder that I have, which I did not mean to get my piece there in the middle, but that's okay. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure, excuse me, oh my gosh, I'm going to measure one more time. So again, about 2 1/8, so I'm going to go just a hair under 2 1/8. And I'm going to cut that off. The reason I cut and emboss this bigger than our space here is because when you emboss, it's going to shrink that paper in a little bit. and we want to make sure it fits, so it's better to go a little bit big and trim it down than not go big enough. So what I'm going to do is I'm laying this on here, getting it all the way to the end here. I'm just going to hold it. I'm taking my little scoring stylus that I use on my scoreboard that's actually for my Cricut, and I'm going to feel right around there, and I'm going to lightly score. I don't think you can see it. Maybe on that side. Oh, you can kind of see it. Anyway, I'm trying to get that curve scored. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just cut some little slits right up to that little score mark. And I'm going to just fold them over, because then you can see where, when it folds, that's where your score is. What's going to happen is we're going to glue this on here. We are not going to try to glue it on this back piece here. It is really hard to get in there and get it to stick. And once this is down, it's tight enough that it's not really going to matter anyway. So it's okay. I'm going to put my glue, or not. I'm going to put my glue, and again, or not. Oh, geez. There we go. Or not. Good Lord. Okay, that one's clearly not going to work. I'm going to go back to the other one that needs refilled, because I know it works. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to kind of lay that in there. I'm going to push this down, and then I'm going to push back towards the end there. And it ends up filling that in, and there is your pages on the end of your book. Okay, so we're going to do it again on the other end. And I would recommend measuring on yours. It may have come out slightly different. So don't just blindly take my measurements. It's best if you measure your project and see what your finished project came out like. Okay. Now it's going to sit in there. And again, I'm going to get this all the way to this end. I'm just going to hold this down and just very lightly trace where my curve is. Okay. And then again, just going to do the little slits. Fold them over. And then glue, glue, glue. And this is why I was saying where we had wrapped like that piece to the outside, why it wasn't going to matter. This is why it didn't matter. Because that's all getting covered up. Okay, so there you have your two sides. So I have a third piece that is going to go on the spine, which you can mat the back of the spine of your book with pattern if you want to. I wanted it to have that kind of cohesive, you know, that paper feel all the way around, or page, like you're seeing pages in an old book all the way around. Okay, that's 7.5. Okay. And then 2 inches. Okay. That, and the other reason you want to make it bigger and emboss it and then trim it down is sometimes when you emboss it, even if you've put it through there, you started out with it completely square, doesn't mean that's how it's going to stay when it gets embossed. Sometimes it does kind of cause the paper to go crooked. So that would be the other reason you're going to do it that way. So now, here's where you have a decision to make. So our book slides in like so. Okay. It's relatively easy to just hook a fingernail in there and slide it out. I have not matted the front and back of this at all, and I don't know that I'm going to. Okay. So what you can do, and I've done it 2 different ways on my other books, and I'll show you in just a second. If you want something to help pull this out, what I have done, let me just move this to the side and I'll show you. So on my big green one with the box, I've got just a piece of seam binding that I wrapped around to the inside before I matted this that will help pull the book out. Okay. And as you can see, I haven't matted the front of that one either. Or on this one, and this is really the only one that kind of needed a pull, was the Gatefold. So all I did is I looped some ribbon here. So where I screwed up, and you can kind of see it pulling here, is I did that after I had already put the book together. I should have actually threaded that through when I did the hinge. I'm sorry, the spine piece, when I attached all that, and I didn't. And that's okay, because what I did is I went ahead and I glued that down. I put an extra piece of cardstock over the top of it to just kind of reinforce it, because you just need it to pull partway out that way, and then you can grab it. Okay? So we can do something similar on this one, and I think what I'm going to do, just because the one that goes all the way around is a lot more self-explanatory than this one. So what I did is I just kind of lined up. So clearly my embossing folder was not long enough for the entire piece. So I kind of have this little spot here where it kind of got continued, I guess. I don't know how else to explain it. There's like a little spot here. Let me put it up there so you can see where that one ends and the next one starts. So I'm going to put this where that sits just to kind of hide it. And all I'm doing is I'm putting some glue down. I've actually got too much of my ribbon. I still have too much of my ribbon, but that's okay. And I'm just looping it, okay? And then I am going to take a scrap of my cardstock. And I am actually going to glue this down. Whoops. I can hang on to it, that is. I'm just going to put that underneath here just to help reinforce this, okay? Then this will slide underneath, and there you've got your little loop to pull the book out of the box. Okay, so I'm just going to slide that in there like so. Line it up. Put it down. And burnish it a little bit. Alright, so there is the book. So now, front, back. Oh, there's my other pen. Lost a glue pen earlier, and I just found it. So, and again, you'll want to measure your book because you may have a slight variation in size. So and this is where, again, if you're going to stack the books and attach them together like I plan on doing, you really don't need to mat both sides. I'm going to go ahead and mat both sides on this one, and I did also on the green one because I'm going to stack them kind of at angles. So depending on where you're looking at it from, you may see some of that other side. So let's go ahead and get our 2 mats on here. And then 2, if you're just building one of these, you're not doing all 3 and stacking them and so on and so forth. You know, this is the point at which you would mat and decorate the top of this however you see fit. Because I'm stacking mine, I don't have to decorate it beyond that until I get to my top one, which is fine. And again, you'll want to measure yours to see what's going to fit for your specific book. You may have done this back half bigger. You may have, you know, there's always a slight variation in measurements on these things, so you will want to measure yours and mat it as close to the edge as you would like. And then for the spine, I am actually going to wrap this piece around the spine. I need to take about 1/8 of an inch off of that. Oops. What doesn't it like in there? And that's something, if you know for sure what you're going to mat that with, you absolutely could do this before you wrap it around the spine like that. The one benefit to waiting, see how we've got like kind of some weird little creases on here, like right here from wrapping that around and forcing that around. If you wait and do this, then, that's my top. If you wait to do this piece, then you can actually completely cover those up. Okay? So all I'm going to do is I'm going to start on here, and I'm going to just glue. I could use score tape. I'm not going to because I want to have the ability to kind of move this around, because I will absolutely lose my mind if I have to pull this off again, especially on this one. Or I'd already screwed this one up once. Okay, give that a second to dry, and then you're just going to come around and you're going to go part way around the back. Okay, you're just going to push and burnish. Okay, and go part way again. You don't want to do the whole thing at once because this allows you to make sure it's positioned right, to make sure it's smooth, everything's getting glued down the way it needs to go. Oops, that just went flying out at me again. And then one more time on the back side. Okay. Okay. So there is our finished spell book. Now, you can leave the spines blank. Right now I don't have anything on my spines. You could, before you put this on here, if you've got, you know, a silhouette or a Cricut that's out of warranty, and you've got the foil pens from We Are Memory Keepers, you could do some foiling on here before you attach all of this with a title. You could cut it out and put it on here. I think that's what I'm actually going to end up doing on this. So I need to sit down and figure those out because I haven't totally figured them out yet. But my books are going to get stacked about like so. And then there's my top with its little treasure box. Yep. So I've got a little bit more matting to do on this one. And then I will do a separate video as far as attaching these together and finishing this off the way that I'm going to finish mine off. Obviously, if you're only doing one of these or you wanted to leave them separate, which you absolutely could do, they would actually be really cute, separate, and just kind of, you know, standing up with some creepy bookends or something, which I'm sure Michael's or Hobby Lobby or one of them has this time of year, would actually be incredibly cute. And now I'm like second guessing myself and thinking that's what I want to do. But I'm not going to because I purposely made the box on the top of that with anticipating it being stacked. So there they are. And then I will be back with how to like finish putting this together and decorate. Okay, so we are ready to stack the spell books. So I have gone ahead and added titles to the spines. These are done in Cricut. I will share my file with these because then they are sized so that they fit on here perfectly. And I did actually look for the spell books on the supply list for year one students at Hogwarts. Because I'm a geek like that, what can I say? Alright, so to glue these together, I am going to hot glue them simply because I think that will hold better. Than trying to do art glitter. Okay. And I don't want them centered. I do want them kind of off kilter. So that's how I'm going to put them down. And my top one is going to stack kind of like this, which I realize it's hard to see from above, and I will try to shoot some video of it kind of from the side when I actually go to edit this, edit and upload this, just so you can kind of get a better idea. Okay, so this, I really just want it in this middle section because it is going on there crooked. Okay. All right. So I'll give that a few minutes to completely set up. But there you have the stacked spell books. So at this point, all I really need to do is just do some decorating. So I've got just some, oh my god, I've had these forever, these little birds. Just random stuff. A fair amount of Tim Holtz type adornments and some little bottles and things that I'm just going to kind of put, not where they're going to impede getting one of your books in and out, but just kind of, you know, sitting on the sides here, and then of course do my top, which other than that, I'm really not sure what's going on here, so I have to figure that out. But there you go, that's it. This is probably one of the biggest projects I think I've done as far as just in scope and everything else. So yeah, I'm glad it came together pretty much how I imagined. So thanks for watching. If you make one of these, any of them, all three of them, I would love to see it. Please share on Scrapping Under the Influence on Facebook and also on Scrapbookers of Country Craft Creations. Thanks!